Your host, Officer Antoine Thomas. As you know, we are in the campaign season around the country, and right here in our state of North Carolina, I'm very involved in the political movement, and I have a lot of great friends that are going to be coming on the show with me to talk about their candidacy. Last episode, which was number 4 in season 6, we brought on Alan Mashburn. He's running for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, and today I have another great brother on the show with me today. His name's Hal Weatherman. He's also running for Lieutenant Governor. And I want to be clear on this. Whoever wins this seat are going to be great. Either party is going to be great. We are backing both, if that even makes sense, because I believe when you have a group of friends and brothers, it's hard to choose one. So we support both, and we know that either candidate is going to do well. And as I always say to my personal friends, may God bless you and may the best man win. But you see here, I have my brother again, Hal's on, and he's in his vehicle because he's moving along on the trail. So I don't want to take much of his time. I'm going to give him proper time to discuss his platform. And again, he's running for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. And many people may say, well, why are you getting involved in the political races, and your show is centered around what we call policing? And I always say on the show, we would never defund the police, but always defend the police. But in order to have a good atmosphere of policing in your state, you need good governorship. And so this is very important all the way down to our state and local races, that they all kind of mesh together, but it plays a role. And we do want to know what our candidates want to do and see happen within law enforcement. So that's why they're on the show. And again, I'm involved. So it'll be befitting not to have these people on. So, Brother Hal, I'm going to let you take the reins and, again, get you back to your routine.
Welcome to talk. Thank you. Well, I mean, just by way of introduction, I am Hal Weatherman. I'm 53 years old. Been married for 20 years to my wife, Michelle. I call her Shelly. We have 3 teenage kids. One is already in college. He's a freshman in college. And the other 2 are still in the home. And I live in Wake Forest, North Carolina, so I live right outside of Raleigh. But my childhood, when people say, where are you from? I split my childhood in Charlotte, North Carolina for half of it, and the other half in a small town called Elkin, North Carolina, which is up in Surrey County, up in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Parkway. And so, I consider Elkin my home. My family, my mom and dad are still alive, and they live there, and all my cousins and extended family. And so I tell people that's where I'm sure that's where I'll retire one day. That's where I'll be buried one day. But, lately my life has been in the car. I'm filming this from my Ford F-150 on the side of the road in Huntersville, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte, heading to an event. Just came from Wilkes County, Surrey County, Hendersonville, North Carolina, and Pitt County on the coast prior to that, or on the eastern part of the state. So, this is what it's like. There are 11 of us running for lieutenant governor on the Republican side. I, don't say anything bad about any of my opponents. I feel the same way you do, that, good for them for running, good for me for running. We need good people to step up and run. I'm a limited government, constitutional, Christian, conservative. I had the honor to serve as chief of staff to North Carolina's previous Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest. So I tell people there'll be no on-the-job training for me if I'm elected. Prior to that, I had the honor to work as chief of staff for his mother. His mom is Sue Myrick. She's retired now, but she was the first female mayor of the city of Charlotte, and then served with distinction for 18 years in Congress as a very member of Congress. And I was her chief for most of that time and ran all her campaigns. But have it in my heart to run for lieutenant governor myself now. In terms of my platform, I preach a message around the state of what I call self-sufficiency. I feel called to run this race. I feel called to deliver the words that are on my heart. And so I preach a message of self-sufficiency. And what I mean by that is I want to prepare our families to be able to stand alone in a dangerous world and to provide for themselves. And I want to prepare our state to stand alone and not be so dependent on the federal government, because I believe we live in very precarious times. With regards to the family, I believe that the woke agenda, if that's what you want to call it, is assaulting our family in every room that they walk in today's society, in the boardroom, in the courtroom, the classroom, the hospital room. And I want to fight the woke agenda. I don't like CRT, DEI, SEL, all these three-letter acronyms. All they are is the DNA of the woke agenda broken into its component parts and then tried to be shoved down our throats. And so many of these ideologies are tied to federal funds. And so when I preach a message of self-sufficiency, a self-sufficient state will have the financial wherewithal and the will and the courage to start pushing back on the federal government. The analogy I use are the drug dealers. Watch the drug dealers on the playground. The first round is always for free to the kids. Why? Because once the kid is addicted to that drug, you can lace it with anything that you want, and they'll take it with a smile on their face. And I would argue that is what our state of North Carolina is today. We are addicted to federal funds, not realizing that the liberal left has hijacked every one of those funding sources, and they've laced those funding, that money, they've laced it with all these ideologies like CRT and DEI, so that if you take the money, you in effect let that into your system, into your institution, and it's like cancer. Once it's inside, it metastasizes and it grows. And we need to be a self-sufficient state to cut that out. When I talk about, self-sufficiency for people, I talk about what I will do from the office of Lieutenant Governor if I'm elected. I want to fundamentally remove the stigma that our society has put on men and women who work with their hands. See, I believe there's dignity in work, all forms of work. And it really offended me when Governor Cooper during COVID would stand behind a podium day in and day out, and he would label half of his population as, quote, essential workers and the other half is, quote, non-essential workers. And I tell people all the time, if that job puts food on your table, if that job puts clothing on your kid's back, if that job puts shelter over your family's head, I promise you that job is essential to you. And if I'm elected lieutenant governor, never again will North Carolina label any form of work as non-essential, because I believe there's dignity in work. See, I think God put man on this earth to work. That's why we're here, man and woman. When you work, that's where your dignity comes from, your self-respect, your self-sufficiency. It's where you automatically train the next generation what is expected of them in adulthood by watching mom and dad work. And shame on our federal government. Shame on our federal government for the last 3-4 years paying man not to work, right? And let me rephrase that. Shame on our federal government that claims to be based on Judeo-Christian values to pay man in such a way that it denies him his dignity, his self-respect, his self-sufficiency, and the ability to properly train his children. And I just think that's wrong. And so, that would be me talking about self-sufficiency. I want to drive people into the trades. I want our young people um, to no longer be pushed into 4-year college degrees if that's not what they want to do. I tell young kids all the time that ask me for career advice. Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to own your own business? Do you want to make 6 figures a year? They're like, yeah. I'm like, do you want to build a business you can sell for 7+ figures? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, go be an electrician, go into HVAC, go be a plumber, go be a commercial welder. And our society, however, has put a stigma on these jobs. And we're sending kids into the 4-year college degree system where they're coming out with a degree in Egyptian poetry. They're $100,000 in debt and they can't get a job. And that's wrong. And so, really want to change that if I'm elected lieutenant governor. On the self-sufficiency for the state, I'll simply say this, and this is especially from a law enforcement background, you'll appreciate this. Here's how I look at the world. I'm seeing trains derail in strategic locations carrying strategic materials that in effect weaponizes the train when it goes off the track. And I'm seeing that happening around the country. I'm seeing poultry plants mysteriously burn up and food processing plants mysteriously burn up around our country. I'm seeing rolling blackouts in the great state of North Carolina, which we have never seen in our lifetime. And last year we saw it for the first time, and we've already been warned that it's going to happen 2 or 3 times this winter. When did that happen in North Carolina? And I'm seeing electrical substations be attacked in North Carolina. Down in Moore County, they attacked our electrical substations. And this is the interesting part. They're attacking the parts that we don't have replacement parts for. Think about that. Think about the ramifications of that. I'm seeing China be allowed to come into North Carolina and buy our sovereign farmland, which I'm smart enough to know and you're smart enough to know is their effort to manipulate our food supply, which ultimately will have national security implications. And on that day that China was allowed to fly a spy balloon over the great state of North Carolina, the day it flew over every one of our nuclear power plants, every one of our critical resources, all of our military installations. And we have to sit back impotently as a state, as a people, and do nothing. That's when you know your state is not prepared for what I call the day of reckoning. And I believe with all my heart, the day of reckoning is coming in this country. I do. I don't know if it'll be a financial meltdown of epic proportions. I don't know if it will be COVID on steroids. I don't know if it would be an assault on our civil liberties like we've never seen before. Like, if you're a believer, if you're watching this and you're a believer like I am, what happens when we as believers move from feeling like we're being persecuted for our beliefs to actually being prosecuted for our beliefs? And I think the birth pangs of that are all around us right now in today's society. And so I'm running for lieutenant governor because I want to prepare our people to stand alone in a dangerous world. And I want to prepare our state to stand alone and not 100% dependent on the federal government for our protection and for our vitality, because that's what's been laid upon my heart. And I think my training and my preparation of all those years with Dan Forrest in particular are going to help tremendously. See, when I worked for Dan, I had this amazing opportunity, and I'm having it again now as a candidate. I got to travel 500,000 miles of in-state travel over that 10-year period with Dan. I've been to all 100 counties multiple times. In my own race for lieutenant governor right now, I've already set foot in all 100 counties. I've gone to 35 counties 5 times or more. And I say that not to brag on that, not as a PR stunt. Yes, I'm campaigning, but I'm also training myself to know the state intimately in the event that I win and I can help lead this state. Because I think the governor and the lieutenant governor of this state have a God-given duty and responsibility to set a vision for the state. The way I read my Bible, the Bible is clear. A people without a vision perish. And I ask people all the time, what is the vision of our country today? Crickets. What is the vision of our state today? Crickets. If you can't articulate what the vision of the state of North Carolina is today, then according to the literal word of God, we are in a state of perishment. And I would argue that's exactly where our culture is today. We are perishing as a people. And we need a governor and a lieutenant governor that are strong, constitutional, Christian conservatives to stand in the gap, not just against the woke agenda, but to know their state so intimately, to know its strengths and play to it, to know its weaknesses and mitigate them, to prepare our people for the dangerous world I believe that we not only live in, but that what it's going to be in the near future. And so, like I said, I feel called to do this. I win either way. I aim to win. I've certainly run many campaigns in my career. I've won this race twice, lieutenant governor's race with Dan Forrest. I ran both of those winning lieutenant governor campaigns. So I know what it takes. And what it takes is to go to the people. The attention span for the down ballot races is just not that strong with public. We're not the president. We're not the governor. We're not the Senate campaign. And so I believe strongly you have to take the race to the people. And I'm trying to do something that's different, and I willfully acknowledge it. In a 30-second soundbite world, I'm trying to reconnect with people one person at a time. And I know that might sound crazy, but that is what we have set out to do. And that's why we travel so much. And the first fruits of my labor, of my time, of my attention, and of the donations that come into my campaign, the first fruits of it go to pay for efforts to reconnect one-on-one with people, because I think that's what our country needs today, all of their elected officials. And so, see, I win either way because I feel called to do it, and I feel a message has been laid on my heart, and I get to travel this beautiful state every day. I get to meet from the janitor all the way to the CEO and everywhere in between. And I get to deliver the same message over and over and over again, and trust God and the people of the state with the ramifications or the reactions to that. But it's an awesome journey, and I enjoy it tremendously. I am in a primary. Like I said, there's 11 of us, and early voting starts February 15th. You can actually vote already right now by mail. That started last week, and of course, March 5th will be the primary. And I'm not shy to ask, if you're watching this, to ask for your support if you like what I'm saying. And regardless of who you vote for, I do want you to go out and vote. I want principled conservatives to go out and vote in this cycle, because everything that we believe, everything is under assault. And I think, every election, everybody always says this is the most crucial election. It's true, and it's going to be true every election forward, because we're no longer fighting Republican versus Democrat. We're not even fighting conservative versus liberal anymore. We're literally fighting spiritual warfare. It's good versus evil. It's those who love America and the founding principles, the principles and ideals that founded us, versus those who hate those ideals and want to tear down this country. And that's where we are today. And in my small part, from the office of Lieutenant Governor, I would like to make my stand. And so, the great pastor E.V. Hill, who was one of my favorite pastors out in California, he's passed away now. He used to have an awesome saying. He would say, "A leader without a following, he's just out taking a walk." And that's the thing about campaigning, right? You go out all day, every day. In my case, already a solid year, and traveling all these miles, and you're trying to build a following. I'm trying to build a following not for me. I'm trying to build a following of preparing our state, because I really do believe the day of reckoning is coming, and we have a window of opportunity to prepare for it. And I want to preach that message and build a following of people that will embrace that and put us on the right trajectory, because I believe that the salvation, if you will, of our country, because I still think there's hope for our country. It's not going to come from Washington. It's not. It is going to come from the states. It's what our forefathers always envisioned. Our forefathers envisioned the power to be vested with the states. And instead, everything is upside down in today's society now. Everything's upside down. We have yielded the power to the federal government, who has then subsequently yielded it to the unaccountable, non-elected judiciary. Look at what's going on in Texas right now, right? Where we're literally, and where's North Carolina? Why is North Carolina not standing in solidarity with the great state of Texas to protect the border? Yes, it's the border of the federal government of our nation, but it's also the border of a sovereign state. And the Biden administration is yielding the border. And good for Governor Abbott to stand up and say, you know what, it's my border too, and I'm going to protect it. And now he's fighting a legal battle with the Biden administration through the Supreme Court. It's time that our country start viewing the Supreme Court the way our forefathers viewed it. They issue opinions, and it's just that. And we have the right to disagree with that opinion. So, I wish that I were already there as Lieutenant Governor, so that great state of North Carolina could start joining in solidarity with some of these states that are fighting back against the federal government and the insanity of what's going on our southern border right now. Just the absolute insanity. We are being invaded, and there's no other way. I personally think Biden should be impeached. Mayorkas should be impeached. This is not negligence. This is deliberate, and they're allowing hundreds of thousands, if not several million, of OTMs, other than Mexicans, people coming across the border from countries that wish us ill, and we absolutely are going to experience a rash wave of, they're going to call it homegrown jihadi-based terrorism. There's nothing homegrown about it. We allowed it to walk across our southern border, and that's what our country is going to be going through in the very short future. And so when I preach this message of self-sufficiency, this is what I'm talking about. Our state needs to prepare. We need to prepare for the days that are coming. And so I put myself out there. When I worked with Suma in Congress as her chief, she was on the House Intelligence Committee. And so she had a top secret security clearance, so did I. And I developed somewhat of an expertise of homegrown jihadi-based movements. That's what I did for several years. I traveled the country. I briefed military officials, law enforcement officials, government officials at all levels, federal all the way down to local, on what to expect from homegrown jihadi-based terrorist movements. And this was going back 15, 16 years. And the warning signs were there. All of that has accelerated. All of that has accelerated with the total collapse of our southern border. And so, we need to wake up. We need to wake up as a people, wake up as a state, and understand that dangerous days are ahead. There is hope, but that hope is going to be vested in the states. And these states need to start banding together and standing up and supporting each other and pushing back when the federal government does stupid things like open up the border to whoever wants to come in. A nation without a border is not a nation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I rambled a little bit, but that, you want to get me fired up, that's what's going to get me going. So.
I love it. You're fired up. You're fired up. I'll say your volume went away a little bit. I think it's because you may have hit the mic. There you go. No, not a problem. You said so many great things within that context. No, this show is, again, today, and for all the candidates going to come on, this is your time just to talk and have your way, because I know how that is to be on that campaign trail, and you got about 10 people running. The time is limited to give you 2 to 5 minutes, sometimes 1 minute. You saw that in Johnson County. I mean, how can you get all your message out? So I love this because I do a lot of talking on the show, so it's my time to sit back and listen, and I learn new things from the candidates, even though I know many of you personally. I never get a chance to hear you from this depth. So that is amazing what you're saying, and 100% correct. Our border has got to be secured. One big thing we see around the country is that people have their views on the border, and we will always say this, and I know you're going to agree with me. As a Republican, we're not being discriminatory. We're not being racist against our people that are coming from the southern border and all over the country, really, right? We see them from Haiti, all over Africa. We're not being racist or discriminatory. We're just saying that you got to do it the right way, and everybody deserves an opportunity in this great country. But we're trying to protect what we have. And again, as we keep hearing so many people are flooding this country without being vetted, we don't know who's here to do harm on the American citizens. And I think everybody would want to agree with that and should agree with that. What you say about that, Hal?
Totally agree. Listen, I mean, think about just look at it from Mexico's perspective. Mexico routinely shuts down their southern border. Routinely, right? Yet we're expected to allow our southern border to be wide open. It's ridiculous. Going back to my days with SUMA, I'll tell you something that I've talked about on my Facebook platform before, but I don't talk about it a whole lot because some people would say it's not directly relevant to the office of lieutenant governor. But I actually think with each passing day, it's becoming more relevant. One of the things that I worked with Sumara and Rand Point on was her work even back then on fighting illegal immigration. And yes, I'm for legal immigration. I don't have any problem with that. We are the land of opportunity, and I'm fine with that. But we should not have an open border. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so even back then, on several occasions, I went out with Customs and Border Patrol with their intel division. A lot of people don't realize Customs and Border Patrol has an intelligence division embedded within it to look for nexus points between illegal trafficking, human trafficking, drug cartels, and also terrorism. And this was literally 15, 16, 17 years ago. And, this is non-classified now and all of that, but I remember going to San Diego and being embedded with the Intel Division of Customs and Border Patrol in cooperation with the JTTF, which is the Joint Terrorism Task Force of California, which is one of the largest. There's actually 5 JTTFs in California. And spending several days with them, even back then. And what we were finding were tunnels that were clearly Lebanese in nature, meaning they were engineered not from engineers with American origins. They were being engineered from people with documented ties to groups like Hezbollah, Hamas. Even back then, we were looking, especially in the California penal system, we were finding a nexus point between traditional American, what you would consider American gangs. I won't name the gangs, but American gangs and terrorist organizations. And you knew that because we were going through the iconography. We were going through the tattoos, if you will, of all the inmates that were intaked into the California penal system for a 5-year period. And this was 15 years ago. And they were cross branded, meaning you would have a gang, the Crips or the Bloods or the Kings or whoever. They would have a gang tattoo, but they would also have a tattoo that would be written in Middle Eastern script that would say Hamas or Hezbollah. Now, if you know anything about gang culture, you have to pledge affinity only to your gang. You can't pledge affinity to any other. That's a punishable by death offense. And here are gangbangers in prison that are literally cross-tattooed with pledging affiliation to another group, and it was hundreds of them. And this was 16, 17 years ago. You start thinking about the connections that existed back then between the drug cartels, the people in the penal system who were still running the cartels from inside the prison, and terrorist organizations, and that's documented. And now you compare that to today, where there is no border, where they can just walk across. They don't have to build tunnels. They don't have to smuggle them in. They don't have to hide. They're just coming across. We're in for dangerous days ahead. We're in for amazing, dangerous days ahead as a people. And we need, as a state, to be prepared. We need to be prepared.
100%. I want to ask you the same question I asked Alan Mashburn. Of course, many people don't necessarily know what the lieutenant governor does. Of course, some may know you all oversee the Senate, and as it pertains to our state education, what are some of the things that you're going to look at as your lieutenant governor, as the lieutenant governor, if God blesses you with that seat? What are you going to do within your powers? And I know a lot of people say that it can be a bully pulpit and things that you can do that probably the governor can't, and you have that outlet to kind of waver into other areas outside of the scope by the
Yeah.
statutes of the state. What is your plans as North Carolina's lieutenant governor?
Yeah,
Do
well,
you
I
have
mean,
any?
I mean, first and foremost, what does a lieutenant governor do? Lieutenant governor is the president of the state senate. He's the presiding officer of the senate. He serves on several key boards and commissions. He serves on the state board of education. Serves on the state board of community colleges. Serves on the state board of economic development. Unofficially, if he's of the same party as the governor. So, in other words, let's say Mark Robinson gets elected governor, and I get elected lieutenant governor. Based on tradition, the lieutenant governor plays a significant role in economic development. When I worked for Dan Forrest, first term, when we were under the governorship of Pat McCrory, Dan was a Republican, McCrory's a Republican. Dan was frequently called on as lieutenant governor to perform economic development duties on behalf of the state. Our state is an economic magnet. We have many companies that we are recruiting to come here, and many companies that are just coming here. And so frequently the lieutenant governor assists with the North Carolina Department of Commerce to fly overseas or fly around the country to recruit companies. Simultaneous to Texas doing that, Florida. We're always competing against Alabama, Texas, Florida, and our southern brethren, if you will, states, because they're all also economically hotbeds as well. And so we're in competition for them. And I would love to play that role. I have a soft spot for economic development because I want to put people to work. I think a well-paying job solves all ills. But the number one thing that I really think people should look at when they elect a lieutenant governor is, can the person actually be the governor? And we often overlook the obvious. We forget that the lieutenant governor is the automatic successor to the governor in the event that the governor dies, is removed, or is otherwise incapacitated. That's happened 5 times in our state history. It's happened five
Uh,
times in our history, and people don't realize. Now, the office of lieutenant governor has not been around the entire state history. It's only been around since I think 1898, 1896, through the iteration of that constitution, because we've had several constitutions in our state. Um, but I think that's an important thing. And so, to me, the best training for a lieutenant governor is to start thinking like a governor. Can you step in? Can you preside over 98,000 state employees? Can you have virtual, because the governor has virtual unilateral control of the real estate? There's some checks and balances on that, but basically it's almost unilateral control of all state property, which is a huge responsibility because the state has vast holdings. Can the lieutenant governor um, if he becomes the governor, can he handle the commutations of the pardoning of people, the commuting of sentences? Um, can he deal with the economic development pressures of the state, which are massive? Um, these are the type of things. Can he preside over a hurricane? We're a hurricane state. You can take to the bank. We're going to have one hurricane or two hurricanes a day. I was on the CERT team under Lieutenant Governor Forrest, and have been through several hurricanes and have sat through not just the simulations but also the response to hurricanes during that time, and the corresponding flooding that comes in here. So there's going to be no on the job training for me. So there's that part of it. How would I use the office? I'm going to use the board positions first. As a voting member of the State Board of Education, I'm going to fight the woke agenda. I'm going to attend every meeting. I'm going to make sure that DPI is held accountable. I'm going to make sure that they're held accountable every day. I will be outnumbered if I'm elected because the board appointments to the state board are by the governor, and they're on staggered terms. So it would take an incoming Republican governor 2 terms to actually get the majority. So the vast majority of the time, if I'm elected, that I serve on that board, I'll be outnumbered. I'm going to make sure that they're held accountable every day. Every day that they meet, I'm going to make sure they're held accountable, and then lift up the insanity, just as Mark Robinson has done a brilliant job of what they're allowing to come into our classrooms. The pornography, the inappropriate sexual content, the overly overt sexualization of our children. And I want to fight for American exceptionalism. I want to do the opposite. I want to come in there and teach American exceptionalism, traditional values, moral values, prayer in school. I'm not ashamed of any of that. And so, I'm going to use that appointment. I'm going to do economic development. I'm going to make it a personal project of mine. I've made a pledge publicly. It's on my website. If I'm elected, I'm going to go through every line of the state budget. I'm going to go through every contract that the state of North Carolina issues, regardless of what agency it comes from. And I'm going to lobby the General Assembly to give preferential treatment to contract to the money that our state spends. Preferential treatment to North Carolina homegrown mom and pop companies. In other words, if we already spend, we have a $30 billion budget. I want to spend our money first on our people. No new tax revenues, no new anything. If we're going to spend the money anyway, why are we not spending it first on North Carolina companies? Let's put our money where our mouth is. Our greatest asset in this state are our people, and I want to put our money into our people. And so, I want to do that. That would be a form of economic development. I've got a whole, you can go on my website, halweatherman.com. The first day that I got into the race, I wrote with no editing why I am running. And you will see the things that I will lift up and I will champion. And by the way, I believe all the things that I list on my website, I can accomplish regardless of who the governor is, even if the governor is of another party. But my hope is that we elect Mark Robinson as governor of this state. That's my personal belief. Even though I'm very good friends with Dale Folwell, he would make an excellent governor. But I have my reasons for supporting Mark, and I publicly endorsed him. Not that he needs my endorsement, but I personally would like to be there to serve Mark as well. We don't run as a ticket. We are independent of one another, and both will have our own agendas. And but I believe that the Bible is true, and that God puts in place princes and principalities. He puts them up and he deposes them just as well. And so, if I have the honor to be there, whoever is above me as governor, I know God put them there too. And I want to faithfully and loyally serve them and help them and force multiply, because I think that our state, as I've said before, our country's in a perilous time. And I think the salvation lies in the states. And whoever is the top dog of this state, I want to serve them and help them serve the people and prepare this state in a way that didn't exist when Dan Forrest served under Floyd Cooper. In a way even that didn't exist when Dan served under Pat McCoy. No fault to Dan at all, and no fault to the governors ahead of him. But I want to forge a partnership and a relationship so that that governor knows, that Republican governor knows, right? Um, as you go, I go. This is We're both in the same boat, and I'm not going to have a separate agenda. I'm going to join with you, and I'm going to serve you loyally and faithfully, so that the people of the state don't have division. They have unity, and a unity of focus. At the end of the day, it's what I said earlier. I want to paint a vision for this state, and a vision is not a study plan. A vision is not some study you do and you publish it, you put it on a shelf, and it gathers dust for the next 30 years. A vision says we know the state, and we know where our trouble areas are, and we're going to fix them. And we know what our strengths are, and we're going to play to them. And we're going to advance our state, prepare our state for the dangerous world we live in. And a governor does not need to be looking over his back during that. He needs support.
Yeah.
He needs someone to stand behind him. And I think that's what God has prepared me for. My entire career has been number two. And it takes a lot of humility to be number two, especially after you've been at it for so long, and your institutional knowledge it grows. But I've always faithfully served the Myrick Forrest family as the number two guy. And I'm realizing now, as I look back on it, God was preparing me to serve as a number two. Even though I'm running in my own merits now, I run, and if Lord willing and people willing, I win, I will find myself again in a number two position. And I'm not going to struggle with that. I'm not going to struggle with that at all. I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to humble myself and be subservient to the leadership that's there with my own ideas. I'm going to still push for my own principles, right? But if it's Mark Robinson or Dale Folwell in that position, I'm going to serve them faithfully, so that they know they've got someone, at least one person in the state, who's going to go to hell and back for them if they're doing the right thing.
Love it. I'll tell you, you said a lot of great things, and you're right. But I'll tell you, and you know this already. We follow each other on Facebook on the Mark Robinson Man All the Way, Brother Has the Way. Of course, if Brother Follow gets a position, he has done a great job as our treasurer. So we definitely understand how that looks. He's done well in that position. So either party will be great. But of course, I would love to see Mark Robinson in that seat, and we're helping to make that possible. But of course, you said it, I said it. God has the last say in all these races that we're in, and if we put God first, the rest will fall in line. Hal, and you said a whole lot of great things, and I wanted the listeners to be able to listen and understand where you're coming from on your platform. I wish this state was. I know you got to get out of here, Hal, but I wish this was a straight party ticket as it pertains to our governor, lieutenant governor, because we find now that, and that's due to Roy Cooper, they're now on the same page with our current governor, Mark Robinson. You know more about it. They don't even speak, I'm sure, much, not on Mark's end, but mostly on Cooper's end. But we need people to come together, and our state's in need. Every state in this country, the country's in need, the world's in need. So it's best to have two people that are like-minded on the same page. Maybe someday that can be different. I don't know how that would look in our House of Reps on how they would vote, something like that. But that would be great to see. Now,
I agree with. I personally think that Lieutenant Governor and Governor should be appointed as a ticket. In order to accomplish that, it would have to be in the future. You can change the terms of the dynamic right now during an election. But you would do it just like the vice president is selected. You would let the governor of each party secure their nomination, and then once they are the nominee, they would in effect go out and appoint their running, and then they would join together and they would run in the general election. That's not the case anymore. We're duly elected. Both are duly elected in their own primaries, and so but if you allow them to be if you allow them to run as a ticket, where the governor could select who the lieutenant governor was, then the lieutenant governor, even though so much of the power of lieutenant governor was stripped away back in 1987, it's a great influence job. But in my opinion, if the governor would pick his lieutenant governor, the lieutenant governor would become the de facto chief of staff to the governor. And I actually think without adding any duties or any appointments or restoring any of the historic powers that were vested in the office, without doing any of that, you would actually elevate the office of lieutenant governor to a amazing, powerful position. Because every time the lieutenant governor walks in the room, they know he is representing the governor, not the lieutenant governor, he's representing the governor, because he's the de facto chief of staff. I think that's what governor should be. I don't know that they will. I know that in this North Country we're a dealing state, so all power that's not expressly spelled out in the state constitution emanates from the General Assembly, and you have to ask permission. We have a very powerful General Assembly in comparison to other states, and so, but I'd be all in favor. But that's not the case. We'll see how that goes. And I do have to run. I'm sorry. I have rambled way too long, and I'm looking at the time right now. I've got to get on.
Hal, I'm having a little trouble hearing you there. I think the volume dropped a bit.
Sorry, I said I have to bolt. I've got to go. I've got to get on
Absolutely,
on
you
the
have
road
to go.
again.
Hey, listen, I have enjoyed the time with you. Thank you for taking the invite. I know you're on the road. You didn't have to do that. And I pray all goes well for your journey and to your next event. And just tell the listeners where we can find you at, and we will move on out of your way.
You can go online, halweatherman.com. I'm on Facebook, so Instagram, Twitter, just Hal Weatherman. You'll find me. And just remember, Hal Weatherman, like Weatherman, like partly sunny, better days ahead. It's spelled exactly the way it sounds. So, and
go right ahead, Hal. I apologize.
No, I said, and I ask for your vote. If you're watching this at home, I ask for your vote.
Awesome. Everybody take a look at Hal's platform. Hal, I want to say thank you for all you have done for this great state of North Carolina. You have had your hands in it for a while. And like you said, God's called you up to have your moment. You've helped a lot of folks out. Kind of remind me of myself. I helped a lot of people out over the years and ran 2 campaigns. Of course, helped with one with Sheriff Donnie Harrison. Then my buddy, he wanted to run for sheriff. Never had any experience in politics. So I took that appointment on, and I get a lot of people saying, when is your day coming? Well, my day is coming in God's timing, but I will say this, how we wish you the best, and again, may the best man win. And until the next episode of Real Talk, you've been listening to, guess what, Officer Antoine Thomas and candidate Hal Weatherman for North Carolina Lieutenant Governor. We wish you the best. Take care.
Thank you.